Good afternoon. It's Monday, December 28th. I'm Shane Masters with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Fresh concern this afternoon in the Jamaica Constabulary Force over what can be described as a sit-in by doctors assigned to the Medical Services branch of the force. It comes as the Police Federation says members of the JCF continue to test positive for COVID-19. Prince Moore has the details.
Doctors assigned to the Medical Services branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force have reportedly scaled back their duties, including the treatment of patients, due to the non-payment of on-call allowance for over 2 years. Chairman of the Police Federation, Corporal Rohan James, told our news center this morning that in recent weeks, the doctors have mainly been focused on administrative duties. Corporal James says the stance taken by the doctors comes at a bad time, as earlier this month, the Health Ministry reported a cluster of COVID-19 cases at the National Police College in Twickenham Park, St. Catherine.
The impact is that normally, on a daily basis, the Medical Services branch would see an average of 30 members. That number has been scaled down significantly to an average of between 5 to 10 per day, which means that a number of our members are being compromised as they are not receiving the treatment that they are requiring to get.
He says the doctors have explained that the non-payment of the allowance is a breach of the contract that they signed.
I myself have started to intervene, and I know fully well that the issue at this time, it is that the Ministry of Finance, notwithstanding having received recommendations, has held a particular view that they believe that there is no need for on-call allowance to be paid to these doctors.
The Police Federation is calling for the Finance Ministry to quickly resolve the matter. Meanwhile, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says Police Commissioner Major General Anthony Anderson and Permanent Secretary in his ministry Diane McIntosh are working to have the matter resolved with the Finance Ministry.
It's the most unfortunate situation because it's a time when the police officers have been on the road much more than before in terms of the surge that was initiated for the December period. I've been working very hard, very effectively, and very long hours. So they need their medical service on call. There has been some, what appears to be best described as bureaucratic mix-up at the Ministry of Finance. I expect to be sorted out very early.
Prince Moore, TVJ News.
The opposition is this afternoon questioning the decision of the government over the delayed rehabilitation of the Cornwall Regional Hospital in Western Jamaica. The concern raised by the opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy, comes on the heels of repeated cuts in the rehabilitation budget of the hospital. Cornwall Regional was partly closed for rehabilitation work in 2017 after several nurses at the facility fell ill due to air quality issues. Details in this report. A number of missed deadlines for the completion of works on the Cornwall Regional Hospital, which has been closed since 2017. Now with COVID-19, emphasis has changed with the Health Ministry's focus mostly on the containing and management of the coronavirus, which has so far claimed over 290 lives. Dr. Christopher Tufton, the Health Minister, said no timeline can be given for completion of works on the Cornwall Regional Hospital. He was speaking with members of the media following the Mask Up Before You Talk Up campaign in St. James last month.
No date right now. COVID has really created some challenges for many of our capital projects, including Cornwall and the Children's Hospital, because it has slowed down some activities. We have to recalibrate that and look at what is happening.
But opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy, says the government should have pushed ahead with the rehabilitation of Cornwall Regional Hospital as part of efforts to use infrastructure projects to resuscitate the economy, which has been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Guy notes that the budget for the repair has been cut twice this year as the government grapples with the fallout from COVID-19. However, he says the hospital project should have been the one funded instead of the Southern Coastal Highway project.
Cornwall Regional is too great and of national importance for the continued cut in the budget, and the government's intention of trying to stimulate the economy by, say, for example, the Southern Coastal Highway, to continue those projects. I think it would have been more prudent to do the infrastructural work at Cornwall Regional Hospital without cutting the budget, simply because you're not only stimulating the economy in Western Jamaica and by extension Jamaica, but also you would have hastened the process of rehabilitation of that very important health facility.
Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton recently blamed the delays on a lack of ability by the contractors and said international expertise would be critical to moving forward. However, local builders have rejected the health minister's assertion. Now, the rehabilitation is set for completion in 2022. And opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Maurice Guy, says it scares him to think about the number of new COVID-19 cases that will result from lack of adherence to protocols over the Christmas holiday. The health authorities have been anticipating a spike and had put in place stricter curfew hours to prevent the usual holiday gatherings. Dr. Guy says the measures could have worked if they were observed by Jamaicans. However, he says he has seen evidence that many people disregarded the rules.
In my own constituency, people have been calling me and telling me that there are dances and parties going on. So I have no confidence that our Jamaican people have adhered to those protocols. And I shudder to think of the numbers of cases that we will see within the next 2 to 3 weeks arising out of this weekend's activity.
Now, up to Sunday, the number of COVID-19 cases reported locally was at 12,723. The death toll was at 295 people. Jamaica's municipal corporations have seen a significant hit to several of their revenue streams as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says many Jamaicans have not been able to pay their property taxes, which fund activities such as garbage collection and payment for street lights. He says all the municipal corporations have been affected, but he's hoping things will improve in the new year.
It is a general situation right across the board. COVID has created some problems there. We are expecting that things will pick up when we look at the collection of property taxes over the last couple of weeks. There is a slight up in it, but not sufficient enough to compensate for the fallout that has taken place.
Mr. McKenzie says the pandemic also reduced revenue from construction projects.
COVID has affected a lot of what the local authorities in terms of their revenues. We're just seeing an upturn in building because that also took a beating in the early part of COVID. And, that in itself also has contributed to, a decline in the revenues of all the municipalities across the country.
Mr. McKenzie also notes that the municipal corporations have not been able to earn from the issuing of advertising and amusement licenses because of a ban on parties. A year of many twists and turns for the tourist sector. That's according to senior strategist in the Ministry of Tourism, Delano Sivright. But despite the challenges, Mr. Sivright is signaling a ray of hope.
We have strict sanitization procedures, we have strict mask wearing protocols, social distancing, and all the other rules that come with COVID-19. But we've been really happy with the number of Jamaicans who have been staycationing across the island. It's really good.
With Britain being the center of attention for the new variant of COVID-19, Mr. Sivright says 2 flights coming from the UK were cancelled because of a UK travel ban.
We're to come in on Tuesday. We're to go into Montego Bay, which was a Virgin Atlantic flight, and a British Airways flight. And thankfully, we were able to have the government decided that those flights can't come in because that would be another 540 plus people coming on those flights into Montego Bay. And it was just too much for our system to manage at this time. So we're able to avert that. So that's a good thing.
3 more people have died from COVID-19, pushing the country's death toll to 298. The latest cases comprise an 81-year-old man from St. James, an 87-year-old man who lived in Kingston and St. Andrew, and an 89-year-old St. Anne man. The Ministry of Health says another death is being investigated. Meanwhile, the island's COVID-19 case count is at 12,732. 9 cases were recorded on Sunday. The Health Ministry says 83 patients remain hospitalized with the respiratory illness. 8 of them are in critical condition. And it's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back, continuing the news. Director at the Mount Olivet Boys Home in Walderston, Manchester, Patrick Newman, says he's anxiously awaiting the government's decision for the resumption of face-to-face classes next year. Mr. Newman says with no face-to-face classes since March this year, the boys' education have been negatively impacted. He says despite getting help with devices to aid online learning, the boys need face-to-face classes.
We have tried as much as possible to do online learning here at school, and we have been very fortunate to get some partners and friends to come on board to help us with laptop computers and tablets so that the boys can have some kind of learning while at home. So it has affected them, and I'm looking forward to next year to see what the government plans are for them to go back to school, because in some cases these boys need face-to-face learning.
And the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Jacqueline Besesa McKenzie, says the Ministry of Health will recommend a phased reopening of schools in January if there is no exponential rise in COVID-19 cases. The government has been appealing to members of the public to comply with restrictions on public gatherings in order to have schools reopen. The Chief Medical Officer says getting children back into the physical school environment is important for their mental health.
We have to balance between keeping the kids at home. We have to start thinking about the psychological issues, the impact of an entire year. For example, young children, 3, 4, 5-year-olds that are being told that social interaction is not good. These are things that do have impact, and 10 years from now is probably when we're going to see the impact of some of these things. So there is an importance of trying to achieve balance. The decisions that we take are not easy decisions, and a lot of things have to be taken into consideration. So I think it is reasonable for us to try to get the children back out of school, but we have to be cautious.
The man who was fatally stabbed by his son in Browns Hall, St. Catherine, has been identified as 48-year-old Roderick Queensborough. It's understood that the son has a mental illness. The incident happened in Faith's district, Browns Hall, St. Catherine, about 3:30 p.m. yesterday. The St. Catherine police are investigating the incident. Ambassadors from the 27 European Union member states have unanimously approved the EU-UK post-Brexit trade deal, paving the way for it to take effect. The deal is likely to become law on Friday, as the UK Parliament is expected to approve it on Wednesday. Under EU rules, it can take effect provisionally, though the European Parliament will vote on it in January. The deal sets the framework for trade once the UK leaves the EU single market and customs union in 4 days' time. The deal, which ended 9 months of negotiations, will be approved by all 27 EU governments in writing tomorrow. The deal ends nearly 50 years of UK membership of the bloc, covering a vast array of policies besides those governing common trade rules. Now to sports. Jamaica Table Tennis Association presidential challenger Andrew Liu has reacted to the possibility of a third candidate throwing their hat into the ring ahead of an impending annual general meeting for the association. Renata Brown reports.
Since the Supreme Court ruling in September 2019, Andrew Liu has emerged as the lone opposition to incumbent Godfrey Lothian. But in the past few weeks, attorney-at-law Dr. Raman Midas has emerged as a potential third challenger. When asked about his view on a third contender for the post of the presidency, Liu welcomed it.
Whatever is best for the sport, I endorse it. It's a democratic process. Anyone that's qualified can run to be the presidential candidate. And so I look forward to the day when the sport can be back at its place of prominence in society again, and all stakeholders will benefit from having table tennis properly governed and properly administered in Jamaica.
In the meantime, Liu says he will not give up on the fight to bring an end to the dispute over the list of affiliates, which has been at the heart of the standoff. Last week, news emerged that Lothian was looking to re-include the Umpires and Referees Association and the Kingston and St. Andrew Cricket Association after both were taken off the list. The delay in the signing of the affiliates list and a war of words between both sides led to the chairman of the resolution committee, Anthony Davis, resigning last week. Lou says despite the delayed tactics, he will look to bring to an end the impasse at the next special general meeting.
I've worked really hard on it, and I've tried to do it the correct way and made every effort to have due process followed. We went to the DRA after unsuccessfully going to the GOA, and we can't afford for the sport to suffer any further. I've spoken to two junior players. They really want to get going, and they've been really badly affected, So we have to do something now to move the sport forward. I have been trying my best to act with restraint and,
A group of 10 affiliates signed a petition last week for the association to convene a special general meeting with the intention to push through a vote of no confidence against Lothian. Renardo Brown for TVJ Sports.
Head of the Hugh Lawson Shearer Trade Union Education Institute, Danny Roberts, is advising the government to look towards debt relief from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, instead of taking a loan to aid in the post-COVID-19 recovery period. He was speaking this morning on TVJ Smile Jamaica. Kalisha Williams has more.
Countries around the world are grappling with the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the devastating socioeconomic impacts are evident as businesses close and unemployment increases in the economic downturn. But the most vulnerable are developing countries like Jamaica and other Caribbean islands. And so the post-COVID-19 recovery period may be extremely challenging for these countries. It's why head of the Hugh Lawson Shearer Trade Union Education Institute, Danny Roberts, is suggesting that the government should seek to get a debt relief from the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Mr. Roberts says taking a loan to rebuild may not be the right move, as increased borrowing will worsen the situation.
The high incidence of debt creates a kind of a recolonization of third world economies. And so what we really need is, like we had during the 1970s and early 80s, a kind of a coalition of countries, the G77 group or the group of the South, that form what former President Julius Nyerere called a trade union for the poor. But there has to be a lobbying effort on the part of developing countries to get some greater relief beyond the existing relief that have been offered by multilaterals in terms of dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic.
According to Mr. Roberts, the structure of Jamaica's economy may pose a grave challenge in getting a debt relief, but he insists it can be done nevertheless.
The space is there, as I said. The global international agencies are already looking at providing those kind of debt relief for developing countries. Countries with debt to GDP in excess of 60% are said to be countries that are in dire difficulty. Jamaica's debt to GDP is about 95-96%. So, we could set criteria on the basis of which such write-off could take place. But certainly it is something that needs to be considered. Not Jamaica going alone, but certainly as a group.
Kalisha Williams, TVJ News.
And an editorial note. In our lead story about police doctors, we said Permanent Secretary of the National Security Ministry was Ms. Diane McIntosh. It is in fact Mr. Courtney Williams. And that's the Midday News. I'm Shane Masters. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.